Let's get right to it. A bombshell has dropped, a bombshell story on ESPN.com. Tim McManus, Jeremy Fowler, an inside piece on the relationship between Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts, described as fractured and unhealthy. And the story details in earnest the problems that this team has. The disconnect between the coach and the quarterback, completely unhealthy, is what is described in this story. The details are pretty damning. And I got to tell you, going into training camp, here we are, right? We're in the teeth of it, the first preseason game, Friday night against Baltimore. And I don't know how they get through this, to be honest with you. I look at this thing and go, I'm shocked after reading this article. How in the world is Bill Belichick not the coach? Because what is described in a nutshell, we'll get into the specifics in just a moment, but what is described is basically Jalen Hurts does not respect Nick Sirianni at all, has no respect for his X and O chops. That's a quote from the story. Like, I don't know how you could go into it when the coach and the quarterback are not on the same page. Now, I get Kellen Moore's here to bridge the gap, but this is worrisome. I mean, this story, and Nick Sirianni will speak today, and I know he's going to try to diffuse it, but this has me concerned. Now, whether or not Kellen Moore could come in and with his offense kind of get things clicking and maybe they win again and they can get through it. But right now, I'm quite frankly, after reading the piece, shocked that Sirianni's still the coach, that he was brought back. If this stuff, and I have no reason to doubt it, is not accurate. I mean, there's unnamed sources throughout that discuss a very troublesome relationship. And I think part of it stems from, obviously, the loss of Shane Steichen really hurt after the Super Bowl. I think there's a Super Bowl hangover in effect. I know they talk about walking around, even though they were 10-1, that they were walking around like their dog died, is one of the quotes from the story. So there obviously, we lost the Super Bowl. It was hard for them to get over. And then another piece of the story talks about how they just rolled the football out, expecting them to have the same success they had a year ago. When most teams go, listen, we know what you're doing now. We'll catch up to you. There is a big division between Hurts and Sirianni on run versus pass. Jalen wanted to throw it more. Sirianni wanted to be more conservative. This is a very troublesome story to come out now. And it really chronicles it. Just as they were trying to put this thing to bed, this thing drops, and it just opens up old wounds, right? And now the public goes, oh, my God, we're going to be looking at this thing all year long. We're going to be, all right, well, is Hurts happy? Now, it all comes down to whether or not they can get through this will depend on one man, Kellen Moore, and whether or not that offense, his offense, can, I think, instill confidence in Jalen where they have success and they're able to bridge gaps. But you have a head coach who's an offensive guy. How does that play out? Like, is he just, hey, Kellen, you're dealing with Jalen? Like, that's not healthy. Like, if you're the offensive coach, you could have an OC, but, you're and you could be the CEO, but you got to have a lot to say, I would think, on direction. And I guess there was a lot of division about how to attack and what the offense was about. So it all started. Now, Sirianni, to his credit, stood in front of the team, and I'm reading from the story. He took full responsibility that he felt he let the team down and didn't do a good enough job empowering the players. It was passionate and from the heart. It was a breath of fresh air, a second source said. It showed leadership. Okay, well, that's what Nick did to kind of keep things, to kind of try to move on from that thing. But Here's what happened. And here's some quotes. Even when we were 10-1, everyone was walking around like their dog died. All year, instead of having fun, playing instead it was, oh my gosh, we lost the Super Bowl. ESPN spoke with several sources who detailed a prolonged strain between Hurts and Sirianni during the 2023 campaign, with one source with knowledge of this dynamic described the relationship as fractured and unhealthy. At the root of the divide, a disconnect in offensive visions, with what a team source described as a lack of full respect for Sirianni's X's and O's chops. That's a big deal. I mean, I was always under the assumption that, and people told me, and we talked to people down there, that he was a sharp guy. One of the reasons why he was hired in the first place, was that he was an X and O guy. Now I know Shane Steichen was really good at the X and O, and I know that Sirianni relied on Steichen for a lot. But apparently, reading through it, that he relied on Steichen, and his vision and Jalen's vision never really jived. Now, it goes further to talk about Jalen, and that the weight of the contract was on his shoulders as well. And that there were times when he wanted to play, quote, hero ball. There was never, how about this? There was never a moment last year when they were operating in a healthy relationship. One source with direct knowledge of the situation added. Wow. I mean, then when Brian Johnson got promoted, I think he thought I could do the same thing I wanted to do, and that didn't fly as much with Nick. Because Jalen always wanted to throw more, and Nick wanted to be more conservative. The Hurts-Sirianni dynamic does not work as well when it's one-to-one, a team source said, requiring that a third party to be prominently involved for the offense to run at a high level. Nick can press on you, a source close to Sirianni said. Wow. They can't be one-on-one? The coach, who's an offensive guy, and the quarterback can't be one-on-one? I mean, that's utterly frightening. As multiple rival coaches pointed out, the Eagles essentially rolled the ball out and expected to win when it came to their scheme, to which a defense is adjusted. The 2023 Eagles posted a 10.9 pre-snap motion rate, last in the league, and 11% than the league average, lower than the league average. Despite the 10-1 start, the Eagles lost 42-19 to San Francisco December 3rd, and that was the beginning of a trend. Jalen didn't, this goes even further, quote, I just think they sensed the vibe was off overall. The source noted that Hurts did make efforts to speak up, either with teammates or requests for tweaks within the offense. Quote, it's not his personality to make demands. So that was during the whole win streak that Jalen sensed it. It was like, dude, we got to do more offensively. And it fell on deaf ears. Do you remember that loss on Monday night in mid-December to Seattle? That was the beginning of the end. That's when Sirianni took heat. Remember, down 20-17, 13 seconds left, the possession near midfield, the Eagles needed an intermediate gain to get into field goal range. Remember, we were talking about that. Instead, Hurts went down the field to A.J. Brown that was intercepted. Sirianni took the heat, which only intensified when he said part of the thinking was that they were hoping to draw a pass interference call. I remember that. A bizarre explanation that drew even more criticism. But it proved to be the cover for his quarterback and wide receiver. Brown revealed that he and Hurts improvised and went on our own on the play. While sources with knowledge of the situation say it did not happen all the time, It was a prime example of Hurts deviating from the script. What was taught was not necessarily what was relayed in the moment. It's not quite enough. Let me add to this. That's what Jalen was thinking. Jalen doesn't give Nick enough credit. The source added, a lot of what we do well does stem from Nick. One team source described it as Hurts trying to play hero ball. He was trying to prove he was worth $250 million every throw. I mean, this is tough, right? This is a tough thing that you had this sort of division between a coach and a quarterback. And I don't know how it doesn't fester. And again, he's an offensive guy. It's one thing if Sirianni came from the defensive side of the ball or was John Harbaugh and his special teams coordinator. But he's an offensive guy. And they apparently have completely different views and outlooks on offense. While Kellen Moore brings newness and could maybe bridge the gap, how does the overarching relationship work? That seems like it's, again, the words in the story, fractured and unhealthy. Well, how do you win with that? Just as a specter. That's why inherently I'm surprised that Nick is still here. That even if Nick goes, listen, it's all me, and that's what he did with his team. Hey, that's all well and good. But if the quarterback is still looking at you sideways, he and A.J. Brown are going off script. Like, imagine that. That they're improvising. They get the play call. We're going to run what we're going to run. Hey, let's run a 9, AJ. Like, that's pretty damning. I don't know how you get past that, even with a new scheme and a new OC.
We all silly like the mayor.